I'll be now sharing my story about what happened to my family, a normal, hardworking Palestinian family from Gaza Strip. These events took place during the Israeli assault on Gaza during the so-called Operation Cast Lead. It started on Friday, January the 16th of 2009, when my father, Muhammad Sharab, he's 64, and he's from Khan Yunis in Gaza. He was driving from his farm in Al-Fukhari, near Khan Yunis, to our house in Khan Yunis city. He was accompanied with my two brothers, Kassab, a 28-year-old architect, and Ibrahim, a 17-year-old college freshman. My father and my brother's identities were well known to the IDF, and so was their vehicle. They spent the previous night in the farm and waited until halfway through the daily lull, or humanitarian corridor, which is announced by the Israeli army every day. They set off at 12:30 and drove through their usual route. The area did not witness any hostilities or clashes. They drove for about a mile when they were surprised to see an Israeli tank on the side of the road. They were not sure whether they should go back or they should continue. However, the soldiers on the tank waved to them to keep going. They drove for about 160 more feet when they came under fire. Israeli soldiers positioned on a civilian house overlooking the road started shooting at them. They started shooting without a warning from a distance of about 130 feet. There were no warning shots, and the bullets targeted the passengers, with 22 bullets going through the windshield alone. The vehicle hit a wall and came to a halt. A bullet hit my father's left arm, while Kassab and Ibrahim were not harmed at that point. The soldiers shouted at them, "Get out of the car, you sons of bitches," while the shooting continued. Kassab, who was in the passenger seat, opened his door and got out of the car. He was immediately hit by a hail of bullets. Later determined to be 18, he was hit across the chest, arms, and stomach. He collapsed on the ground. Ibrahim got off the car and was immediately hit with a bullet in his left leg under the knee. The victims were clearly visible to the soldiers, and when Ibrahim tried to use his cell phone to call an ambulance, the soldiers shouted, "Drop the phone or we're gonna shoot you." My father tried to crawl toward Kassab to check his condition, but the soldiers fired few rounds around him and ordered him not to move and stay where he was. My father turned to the soldiers and asked them for help, asked them to provide something to stop the bleeding. The soldiers' response was, "Shut up or call an ambulance," which my father interpreted as a permission to use his cell phone. He called the Palestinian Red Crescent and explained the situation and the location where they are. But at that point, the dispatcher responded by saying that the area where they were is controlled by the Israeli Defense Force, and only the International Red Cross could communicate with the IDF and get a permission to send an ambulance there. And he passed the information on to the Red Cross. The Red Cross contacted the IDF to receive a permission to send an ambulance. However, their request was not granted. My father kept calling the Red Crescent upon Ibrahim's requests, and he kept getting the same answer, and the Red Cross kept communicating with the Israeli army, but their requests kept being refused. Kassab's condition was only confirmed around 6 o'clock when my father managed to reach him to scare off some cats that were circulating around his body. Kassab's body was cold and stiff, and his death was confirmed. My father and Ibrahim were still bleeding, and they were still pinned next to the car, while the soldiers repeatedly refused their pleas for help. Whether they asked for a sip of water, a blanket, or any medical assistance, the answer was always no. Ibrahim passed away in my father's arms around midnight. He passed away after bleeding for 11 hours from a non-fatal leg wound. My father was left alone in the dark with the bodies of his two sons. While he was there in the cold, helplessly looking at the bodies of Kassab and Ibrahim, several agencies, including Physicians for Human Rights, Israeli news websites, Walad, Ynet, members of the Israeli Knesset, were contacting the IDF, demanding the army permits medical crews to evacuate the victims. The IDF's response was that their request was under consideration. Finally, at 7:30 a.m. on Saturday morning, the IDF informed Physicians for Human Rights that they will allow an ambulance to approach, but that will only be at noon on Saturday. The PHR kept asking for an earlier evacuation, but the IDF did not relent. And my father, along with the bodies of Kassab and Ibrahim, were evacuated to the European hospital in Gaza, which was about half a mile away from where they were shot. After almost 24 hours from when they were targeted by the IDF. Before I conclude my testimony here, I would like to share with you the testimony of a resident of the house where the IDF soldiers were positioned. He was taken as a hostage in the house along with 9 other civilians. The witness reported radio communication between the soldiers and their commanders, which he overheard. The conversation goes as follows. Soldier, a car is approaching. What should we do? Voice on the other side, shoot. Are you sure? Yes. No warning shots? No warning shots. A few moments later, the soldiers said, all done. In a few minutes, the soldiers asked, should we help? And the response was, No, let them help themselves.